I heard one time that climate change it happens much more locally than in a global scale.
Climate used to be thought of locally. This is an old way of thinking, I believe. And I think the science has sort of proven that stuff is more interconnected than we liked to initially believe. So I don't know what to tell you. All I know is like for whatever reason, the monsoon season in India, which is a country that proportionately consumes and emits way less, consumes less energy and emits less greenhouse gases, are having the worst monsoon season.
Monsoon. Okay.
Monsoon is the period where it rains so much you get water by the neck
Oh.
everywhere.
Okay.
But they had like it was either a region of India or Pakistan, like the heaviest of rains ever.
Is that cyclical though?
But what's the cycle? 100,000 years?
I don't know. That's
You keep saying people keep saying it's cyclical, but what does cyclical mean? When was the last time you had this kind of rain? You know,
I don't know.
you
But if it
you're
happened
going
before,
forward.
how much of that is due to human impact, to human action?
The thing is,
That's what I'm saying. Is it something that we're causing or we're contributing
you're,
to it?
you're
Or is
contributing.
it something
You're
that's going to happen regardless?
accelerating.
That's my biggest
Everything
question.
happens regardless at a very slow. It's like the metaphor I gave you. Like, did a person? What's
And
it?
how much? If we're accelerating it, how much of that are we
Apparently a
accelerating?
lot. Apparently a lot.
By how many
Because
years? And
well, the proportion is like if you didn't have cars, you wouldn't be. If you didn't have look at this chart right here. No cars, no road transportation, no coal firing, no blah 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 blah. You would have this much actual emissions in billion metric tons of CO2.
anthropogenic. That's the word. I'm saying anthropological.
I don't even know what anthropogenic
Anthropogenic.
means in this context.
Well, it means human. It caused by human. Anthropogenic.
This is the number of eruptions that you would have to equal Pinabatubu to equal the burning of fossil fuels in 2020. You had to have 700 of the same eruptions, or the Mount St. Helens 3,500, assuming all these numbers are good estimates. Number of days of anthropogenic CO2 to equal a year worth of global volcanism. So in 2.7 days, you emit as much CO2 as a whole year of
In a
volcano
day.
activity. So these are really big. We're talking about orders of magnitude that are different. So it's not unreasonable to argue that this has to have an effect because we're releasing at rates that are much higher. You would take, instead of taking a whole year, it takes 2.7 days. How many 2.7
And
days?
I
are in a year?
also heard that CO2 does not stay in the atmosphere.
I mean, part of gas.
And there's a name for that, but I don't know.
This is going to be the last myth we're going to bust right now. Carbon dioxide is different animal. It's out of the atmosphere. It hangs around for a long time, between 300 and 1,000 years. This is from NASA. Are NASA bought by the government? What do they want you to know? Getting a handle on carbon dioxide part 2. The resilience of Earth's atmosphere has been proven throughout our planet's climate history, said CRISP, science leader team at NASA, blah, blah, blah. In the air, we have these amount of things. Carbon dioxide is a different animal. Changes in our atmosphere associated with reactive gases, gases that undergo chemical reactions, like ozone and ozone-forming chemicals like nitrous oxide, are relatively short-lived. Meaning, remember when I talked about how the ozone layer is built by bombarding the oxygen particles in the atmosphere with ultraviolet and high-energy radiation that comes from space, right? The O2 molecules get combined into this very unstable but in temporary form, which they breaks apart a few molecules and they bind together in an unusual bond that doesn't really exist in a stable condition. But because they're constantly being bombarded with this radiation, you get the O3 molecule, which is the ozone molecule, which then acts as a filter for this high energy radiation. It's kind of like ozone is created by the bombardment of the bombardment of the O2 atom molecules, and then the O2 molecules keep getting bombarded into O3, and it creates this thing where it's kind of like a self-generating shield, right? And so that's what it's alluding to. The atmosphere gases, those are short-lived. They keep being destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt and losing the instability, going to back to stable and repeating the process. And then carbon dioxide is a different animal. It's not short-lived. They hang out for 300 to 1,000 years. Thus, the humans change the atmosphere by emitting carbon dioxide. Those changes will endure in a time scale of many human lives. Again, the concept of time scale,
Okay,
right?
and then it'll create the greenhouse effect, and then it'll melt the ice caps, and then we're gonna see sea levels going up, and then what's gonna happen? Is it gonna cool the Earth? It's gonna generate
Well,
a. We're gonna accelerate the process towards another ice age. Is that what's gonna happen?
yes.
And
So,
animals are gonna be extinguished, or
well, that depends on the adaptability if you understand enough about the biology and the ecosystems, you can probably answer that question. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what's going to happen. What I'm seeing and observing is like ecosystems are getting disrupted. Climate for humans is becoming very annoying, and
you mean
and
like extreme weather kind of
extreme
stuff?
weather, yeah. And then you don't understand the actual consequences of having millions and billions of fresh water melt into salt water and how like it can affect the salinity levels
It's
of
gonna
the
become less
oceans.
salty.
Yes, but
Just
currents
kidding.
and I'm sure that a lot of marine life, there's a reason why you have freshwater fish and saltwater fish, and some fish don't really
But
like
I heard
to.
the ice caps they melt and then they freeze up again.
Eventually, 100,000 years later, and you're talking about melting everything instead of you're like 11,000 years, like the thing was saying, into the melting process of the ice caps. And it also said that the ice age is longer than the hot age, right?
Hmm.
So if the ice age is 100,000 years,
So are you saying, let's say, okay, all right, so if we're just accelerating the process, so I'm assuming that, let's say that we're not accelerating the process. Okay, let's say we're living in perfect harmony and
Mhm.
we're just letting nature do its thing, and 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 that's the situation I'm creating,
Mhm.
hypothetical
Hypothetically,
situation.
there's no industrial revolution. We haven't discovered how to burn
So
fossil.
with that being said,
Mhm.
future generations, future generations, they're gonna have to deal with that sort of like climate change anyways,
Well, it
right?
depends on how because it doesn't when it happens over 10,000 years, it doesn't feel like climate change because so many people are going to be born and dead, and life is going to move on, and it's going to be a slow cooling adapting effect. Like you don't know how humans
I'm
used
just
to
trying
live
to
to.
understand, like,
What's the
what are we
rush?
trying to avoid?
Well, you're trying to avoid the acceleration of the process
And if we
because
don't do anything, what's gonna happen, and how long is it gonna take for that catastrophe to happen?
the
Like,
catastrophe is
is
making.
it for my kids or for my
Does it matter? Do
grandkids,
you
or
care? Are you
I don't
selfish
know.
enough
No,
for
I'm not being selfish. I'm just trying to
your
understand
great
the
great
scenario.
grandsons, but you care about your son's life, but like whatever happens, that's their problem. After that, that's part of your
No, but I'm saying,
responsibility.
if humanity is gonna have to deal with those changes anyways in the future, what wh- um wh- why does it matter if it's gonna happen in 200 years or in 2,000 years?
I don't know. It's hard to I from where I'm standing, I don't know. All I
We're
know,
just
this
buying
is like
ourselves
a
time.
it's
Time.
not buying time. I gave you the metaphor. What's the difference between crashing at 160 miles per hour into a wall or slowly braking from a mile away and just touching the wall? The
And
difference is adaptability. One, you went into a huge stop very, very fast and had all the consequences of the lack of adaptation. And the other one, you just bumped into a
oh,
wall.
no, yeah, but I'm not saying that we don't have to make changes. I'm just saying, like, how quickly do we have to make changes? How much time do we have? Like, can we make a more accurate analysis?
Well, to do
And
that, you
like,
would have
what
to.
kind of sacrifices are we making, and how fast do we have to start making those sacrifices and those changes? Like, I think what not bothers me, but the question that pops in my head the most is, um what is the how urgent is this matter? How quickly do we have to make those sacrifices, or what kind of sacrifices are we talking about? Like,
Well,
are we talking about a real crisis, that is coming really quickly towards us.
It's quickly in a geological time scale. It might not quickly
And if we
be.
don't do anything about it right now, like if we don't make drastic changes, and if we don't allow the government to regulate and control every step we take.
You're sounding a little bit condescending.
No, well, I mean,
Is that a genuine
that's
question, or
well,
just
that's
challenging
no, I'm just
the idea?
challenging the how things are being done, and who are
So,
we giving the power to?
but what does that matter? Like, I don't care about.
Are we gonna tell the farmers to stop cultivating? Are we gonna shut down the farms? Are we gonna create a global food crisis?
Why would you create a global food crisis?
Well, that's kind of
You
happening
you
in the
you you're,
Netherlands
you're
right now.
mixing concepts right now. We're
There's a
not
lot of
analyzing. If you want to look
what
at
are the
this,
steps that are being
all
that
right.
we are taking right now towards a better climate scenario? Like in order to save the world, what are we gonna do? We're gonna what are the changes that are like in what are the changes that need to be made, and who are we giving that power to regulate that
I
and
think
legislate? Like what?
my answer to this: you first off, you have to turn off your TV, and you have to stop being fed whatever you think it's either an alternate agenda, and look at the problem from an engineering perspective. Okay, this is a graph right here of the increase of amounts of atmospheric CO2, whatever Mauna Loa. It sounds like a place in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Observatory, right? So from the 1960s all the way to 220, we've increased 80 parts per million. Is
And
that
why
a
is
lot?
that? Because there's more people in the world, or
I don't know. Maybe because
because
it's like a place there's less
more car?
people, so you
Okay.
can tell. Wow, if there's CO2 here, it means like it must have drifted away, and now it's. If I was gonna measure this, I was gonna measure it in the purest air possible that does not have cars, and to see, because if the increases there, it means it's caused somewhere else. That's, I mean, my 2 cents on this. But so you have this graph. I don't know what this means. I don't know if 320 is a lot or a little. I can just know a very, very strong trend. Now I can go back into the ice caps and pull ice out of the ground and measure these things, because the ice gets trapped, grabs pieces of atmosphere when it falls, and it compacts and it stays there because these are very, very, it's like permafrost. They don't go anywhere. So then I can take those values and compare them to what I have right now, right? And I understand there's a correlation between these values and the amount of heat in the atmosphere, amount of heat on the planet, and that influences, in a way, influences the climate. Okay, so this is my premise. Now, I can also look at it and calculate what is the estimation of output, how much would it naturally occur versus how much would it naturally be extracted from the atmosphere versus how much we are actually, as humans, as species, putting it out. And to see that trend in growth, you can like dive deep 100,000 years in ice and see exactly what were the values in the last ice age, or maybe you can even go before that and see what were the values before the last ice age, and then you find a graph. Like these are the intervals that create ice ages and the in between periods of
And that's
the
what I heard
opposite.
too. That in past times, they were able to detect and or measure a greater amount of CO2 in the atmosphere than there is right now, something like that.
Because they're still, you know, if you think of, if taking into consideration everything that we just read, we're not at peak CO2 atmospherical levels. You can still be pumping more, and maybe the last interglacial era had even a lot more CO2 in the atmosphere. But what you're going to see is that increase in the atmosphere is much slower. It's much slower. It's much slower. It took 50,000 years, 70,000 years. I don't know, because they just told us when was the last ice age. And they tell us that the interglacial age is shorter. So assuming that everything is, these studies are legit and everything is correct, you will look at the amount of increase throughout the centuries. And maybe you are looking, and I don't have a pencil to show, but maybe you're looking at a very, very slow increase in the time scale of 100,000 years, right? It goes from here to here, right? And now we're in the beginning, 10,000 years in, and all of a sudden you see this. So we're going to reach that level if we keep current course, instead of like tens of thousands of years in 100 or 200 years, and we're going to get to the same point. And
Yeah,
that,
but I guess that's my biggest question. Like,
then what will
okay,
happen?
the
Right?
government
That's
is
the
gonna
question.
come and tell me I have to stop eating meat, otherwise,
I don't care about what the government tells you. I care about how much
but
output,
I do
how
care what
much
the government
methane,
tells me.
how much methane is actually being output, and how much is that relevant to the whole equation. Again, look at
Yeah,
it
but you
from
have to
instead
tell
of
me. I
looking
have
at.
to know. I have to know
You can do some
if
math.
you stop. Okay, everybody's gonna have to consume.
You're afraid they're
Uh,
gonna take your burgers. That's what it is. That's what it's all
w-
about.
I'm talking about something that is essential for human life.
Food.
Food. Very. I'm not talking just about meat or red meat or whatever type of meat. Animal protein. Um, I guess my point is those sacrifices that I'm being told to
The
make.
what
Let's say,
sacrifice?
well,
Drive
I'm
less,
talking about, yeah.
or
Well, buy electric car, or you know,
consume less energy.
consume less energy, or take less showers, or eat less meat. Those
Showers
things
don't
that
generate.
I'm just giving a very simplified example. But I'm saying if I start making those sacrifices, what am I looking at? If I don't make those sacrifices, something is going to happen in a year from now, or I'm making those sacrifices for a generation that's going to come 10,000 years from now.
Let's see.
That's my question.
Potential consequences.
Because I've been told that the year was going to end in
But
10
that's
years, in
idiotic.
12 years,
The world is not gonna end.
in 2012 or whatever, or we're going to have cataclysmic natural disasters very soon if we don't stop.
All
If
right.
we don't start keeping track of our carbon footprints. That's my big
Quarrel. Hello, everybody, and thank you for watching until the end. This has been Wooot, and I hope you liked our conversation. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. Tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about next. Also, check out some of our other episodes. We post every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see you on the next one.